Okay. To your corner of the world, or should I say my little corner of the world, to your little nook or corner of the world. I think that sounds good, maybe. I don't know. Still working it out. Today, I want to talk about something that isn't a part of the list of like my screenshots and stuff or bookmarks and ideas. But I mean, it kind of is, but it's a little further back. But another thing I want to do on my channel is if something is on my heart to talk about, I want to talk about it. So, and sorry if you hear our rooster, that's his way of saying, like, hey, it's time to feed us. So, which my dad will do shortly, I'm sure. But if it's on my heart at that time. Now, I do like, I don't like to take the screenshots out of order, but I do like to, like, if I put the screenshots on pause to talk about what's on my heart, then that's fine. So I don't like to take the screenshots out of order, but since this is also on my heart, then I guess, it works out. And it's not exactly a screenshot. It's kind of in the realm of a screenshot, but this is more exactly on topic of what I want to talk about. I do have a disclaimer. I may cry in this audio, but it is something, you know, that I do want to express, um, I think as authentically as possible. Um, and it's another reason why I started this YouTube channel, I think is as a coping mechanism. Um, I think every time I've tried to start a YouTube channel in some way has been a bit as a coping mechanism. Now, I will say that the last time wasn't necessarily as a coping mechanism. I think it was more so to just speak about what was on my heart. But this one, I think, is more of a healing. It's a part of a healing process. Um, I've looked up a couple of different ways to heal from, things that I've been through in my life, but also things that I've been through recently in my life. And one of the suggestions was like taking control of your life back, like, doing the things that you say you want to do. Like, even if you don't have all the equipment, or even if it's not going to be perfect right away, like, just putting yourself out there as a start. So you can feel like you're making, a step towards something new instead of, you know, feeling like whatever happens to you is still current. And I kind of want to talk about how that's been going for me. Um, but also, like I said, I do want my channel to help people of all, walks of life and people who've been through, a lot of different experiences, but mainly I can only speak on the experiences that I've been through. Um, so recently I have been trying to heal from, and I don't know if you can heal from PTSD or if you can just, move on with PTSD. I'm not quite sure yet. And I, was speaking to my best friend about this the other day, and she broke down and I was crying. And I basically just explained to her, it kind of sucks because for most of my life, I don't really remember a time that I wasn't healing from something that's happened to me. And I think if anyone, whether it's now or 40 years from now, is listening to this and they kind of can relate, like one, just one fucking event after another keeps happening to you, then it'd be it starts to feel like your life is just one big, you know, stop and heal, just, oh, I'm moving on. Oh, something's happened. Let me stop and heal. Oh, I'm moving on from that. Oh, something just happened again. Let me stop and heal. Great, I just moved on from that thing. Wow, something just happened to me again that I have to heal from. And it just keeps going and it keeps going. And um and so it does start to, you know, feel like I said, your life is just one big healing process over and over and over again. And that's what life is, it having experiences and not holding on to them too much. But the thing is, some experiences are very traumatic and they leave a very shocking factor in our life that it becomes something. It's kind of like if you watch a movie or you read a book and it's just something just like it blows your mind. And it's really, really hard to stop thinking about it for a few days or a few weeks or a few months, maybe even a year or two. It becomes like all you think about. Like, it's not that easy sometimes. And I think especially when the situations, like I said, are very traumatic and they cause you a fear of your safety or a fear of for your life or a fear for your mental health. And so I think situations like that can be very hard to, move past versus some other ones like, oh, I had a good day today, or oh, I accidentally fell and slipped in front of everyone, but I moved past it now. Like, small things versus things that are a bit bigger. And so I cried to her because I was just like, I can't remember since being 8 years old, a time where I wasn't healing from something or something wasn't happening to me. And I'm 28 now, so that's 20 years worth of issues and problems that have happened to me. The first time I was ever molested was at 8 years old. And then something happened to me at 9 years old, and then something happened to me between the ages of 11 and 13. And then I was, abused in a home all the way until I was 18 by my mother. And then something happened to me at 20. And then well, actually, incorrect. I forget, at 17 something happened to me, and like I said, I was abused on top of that. And then something happened to me at 20, and then something happened to me. Well, something happened to me at 19, something happened to me at 20. Um, and then something happened to me around 22 years old. And then I met the, love of my life. And it's just been from 22 to 28, a very traumatic experience with him. And ever since 8 years old, there's only been like 3 or 4 years in between that were semi okay. But all the rest of that 20 has just been one traumatic event after another. And so it really doesn't leave a lot of time for you to stop and for your nervous system to calm down and for you to heal the way that you sometimes need to. And so it does really, bother me because what triggered, a lot of things that, and I can't say what triggered what happened between me and the love of my life, because how he chose to react and respond to it is completely his choice, and that is still on him. But what I can say is I wasn't ready for what I thought I wanted from him at that time until I made a mistake. And I was like, oh my God, no, you're still not healed. Something's wrong. Why did you do that? And I had to sit back and ask myself, like, is this who you want to be? Is this, what you want for this person that you claim to love? And how can you, actually love them? And that's when I had my, ego death, which maybe I'll talk about one day. I talked about it a lot on my TikTok at one point, but this is something new, a new place, so maybe I'll talk about it here one day. But during that time, he was still very harsh towards me, and it was not good because I had an only relate to God. As someone who is now, I guess, a pantheist or between the realm of agnostic and a pantheist, if you will, um, I do, um, I grew up in a very religious household at that time, and I was kind of very religious myself. And I didn't really believe in Christianity, but I did believe in God. I did believe in spirit, and I could feel it, when there was service. I could feel it when, the pastor was preaching. I could just feel it in the room. I could feel it in the car on the way home. Sometimes I could feel it in our house. Um, Sometimes I could just feel it with me or on me or near me throughout the week and things like that. And when I would cry, I could feel it, watching over me and listening to me and comforting me. And so I've always believed in God. And the thing is, I do believe that we are God, and I do believe universe is God and spirit is God. But I've always believed in God. I've never ever doubted God at all. Um, and so that is what that felt like when I finally, you know, loved someone in that way, because I've always wanted to be that kind of person that, you know, how the Bible talks about, being in his image, or, loving as he loves you, forgiving as he forgives you, caring as he cares for you, um, showing compassion as he's shown for compassion for you, and forgiving people of their sins, and, turning the other cheek, and all these other things, and, being generous to, all people and all things. And I've always wanted that, but I never quite thought it was possible, especially because all the things that had happened to me in my life. I was just like, that's not the world we live in, that's not it's not the world we live in. And, maybe at this time when God was alive, that was possible, but it's not now. Okay. Lord have mercy. Oh, the flowers are blooming. Yay. I love spring and summer around here. All our flowers start to bloom again. Well, all my dad's flowers, but I need to bring my stuff outside and put it somewhere. Oh my word. What does this thing want? What does it want? The other roosters are doing it. Everyone's doing it. But um, I just always felt like it wasn't possible, and I always said I wanted to meet someone like that who, loved in that way. And I never really thought that I met someone like that 100%. There were people that I met and I felt like it was very close, but it wasn't exactly, I just knew it wasn't what I was looking for. And I'm not saying people in romantic sense. I mean, like, mentors and teachers and some friendships. And it felt very close, but not quite. And one reason is because they always ate meat, you know, and I was just like, there's no way God wants us killing animals. I can never quite get behind it. Um, and of course I did eat meat. Now, I didn't always eat meat. When I was younger, they ended up having to like force me to eat meat because for a while I stopped eating meat. I didn't eat meat for a really long time. And so I just stopped eating. I just stopped eating. And the doctor was like, okay, if she doesn't eat, like, she's gonna die. Y'all gotta feed her something. And, you know, he told them about, I think it's called like Pedialyte or Pediasure or something like that. And they started buying it for me, but then they couldn't like afford it anymore all the time. And so they were like, look, you're not getting up from this table until you eat. And I didn't want to be there like all weekend. So I ended up eating it. And that was like the end of that. And I ate meat for a really long time after that. And I haven't eaten meat in like a few months now. So I've been doing pretty good so far this year. Um, and so I wanted to stay that way, you know, this is my main goal now. Like I was going in phases at first because I knew it was going to be hard to just cold turkey cut, but I phased it in and out for like 3 years, and I started like only picking like certain months that I would eat meat, or maybe certain months that I would only eat a certain kind of meat until it got easier and I craved it less. And I started incorporating easier recipes that were vegan or vegetarian. And till I started, you know, craving, I had to like train my cravings to crave a different meal instead of this. And now it's just so much easier. And the last time, well, actually no, I did eat meat a few weeks ago. And the reason I ended up eating meat is because the ramen I order does not allow us to substitute or take away the pork anymore, unfortunately. And I don't like things going to waste. I'm a very much no waste type of person if I can help it. And so there was no place to put the meat, and I didn't want to just throw it away. So I was just like, okay. And I didn't end up eating all of it because it actually tasted fucking disgusting. No offense to the place. It just, I couldn't, the texture, after all these years, the texture of meat finally got to me. Um, and I was just horrified. So next time I order it, I'm gonna make sure there's a place I can put the pork. My brother, usually I would have given it to him, but he wasn't home for that weekend. And so by the time he came back, the pork was gonna just be fucking old and dry. And so I was just like, okay, I don't want to waste it. But other than that, I haven't bought any meat. I haven't cooked any meat myself in months. That was the first time, and it was like two little pieces of pork belly that goes with the fucking ramen or whatever. Um, and that's pretty much it. Like, just the meat thing is not something I really participate in anymore. Um, Now it's like someone from a different culture like offers me to taste their food and it has meat in it. I won't be rude. I won't say, "Oh no," you know, or "Oh, I don't eat meat" or anything. Like I don't want to offend anyone, and I do believe it's very important to still try other cultures, but I try to like make sure that I just don't get the parts with the meat in it or anything like that. So I try to be very cautious and not partake in any meat eating. And it's been that way, like I said, for months now, and I'm very proud of myself. Um, but I used to could substitute the pork out, but it doesn't let us anymore on DoorDash for some reason. I don't know why, but it did not give us that option. It didn't give me the no pork option. It didn't give me the option to substitute it out. And I was very down about that. But I don't like any other ramen around here, and I don't like any other ramen from that place except that specific one. So I'm gonna have to figure something else out. Like I said, maybe just next time. Um, like, I don't know, maybe next time I'll like make some rice or something and then just put the pork on top of it and find a homeless person and just give it to a homeless person or something. I don't know. But I didn't have rice at that time. So that's why I didn't go with that idea. But maybe next time I'll go with that idea. But I really don't like waste. So anytime I do something a bit unethical or I have to partake in it because, that's kind of the easiest route of society at that time, then I try to cut something else out. So like if I order something on Amazon, I don't buy Velveeta mac and cheese for a really long time. If I buy Velveeta mac and cheese for, I don't order anything off Amazon for like a few weeks. Um, Things as simple as that, like, and that's what I used to do in practice when I was trying to stop myself from eating meat. When I didn't want to eat meat, or when I did eat meat, when I was phasing in and out, I would say, okay, I ate meat for like 2 months. Now I'm not going to eat meat for like 6 months or 3 months or like, and that's how I kind of started phasing in and out until it got easier. And like I said, I was not expecting what happened to happen. And by the time I finally ordered, it was one of the only places left to order from. So next time I'll just have to know that. It was my first time ordering from there in a long time. So I kind of wanted to call and be like, hey, why is that? But I've also said I'm going to try another ramen place. And if they let me substitute the pork, then I'm just going to have to, go with that one instead of the one I usually go with. Simply to be, like I said, to make sure I'm aligning myself with my morals as much as possible. Um, but that was the first meat I've eaten in months. So I'm so proud of myself. And I'm glad I hated it. I'm glad I'm finally to the point where the texture feels like fucking rubber to me and it tastes like shit. Cause now there's really no reason. Like I don't ever see myself going back to meat. At first when I would go back to meat when I was still phasing in and out, I definitely still kind of enjoyed it a bit, but I'm glad that last time I really didn't enjoy it at all to the point I didn't even finish it. I almost was throwing it up. I was gagging and everything, and I was just like, yes. Like, I hated that was happening because I spent money on it. But at the same time, I loved that I wasn't enjoying it because it let me know, like, you finally did what you said you wanted to do. So there's that. So I guess I'll keep you guys updated on what happens with the ramen and the pork. But all of that being said, that's why I couldn't really align with those people 100% because I'm like, I still feel like they're being a bit hypocritical, like they can say that they love me all they want, they can show it all they want. But what about the animals? What about the animals? And it made me feel like you just love me because I'm a human. You just love me because, you know, you feel like that's what you're aligned to do, but you don't show that love for all things. And so your love is not really unconditional. The condition is I have to be a human. And I think I've spoken about um a very important figure in my life. Her name was Miss Stevenson. I spoke about her in the closure video I have posted. It wasn't really for everyone to hear. It was more so for a specific person. But I did want it public because I think it does show my authentic journey that I am trying to display as someone healing from PTSD and healing from the traumatic events that took place between me and that person and that situation. And that's actually what I want to speak about a little bit soon here in this video. But even with her, as much as she's felt like an angel that came down on me, I always used to say, like, in my head, and I think I maybe even asked her this one time, like, if I was a chicken, would you still, like, love me? Would you still care for me? Would you know it was me? And I think she said something along the lines like, if the chicken's bad, then yeah, I'll probably know it's you. And like, it was just kind of like a joke, but in my head, I really wanted to know because one of the things we used to do all the time is on Fridays, like if I was good all week at school, she would let me come to her classroom and we would have like Wingstop and stuff together. And it just never felt like it felt amazing to be with someone who cared for me, but it did not feel right, to just be eating the meat and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, I really wish she didn't eat meat because then I would think she was God. And so that's why I never even felt 100% right with her. And so loving the love of my life is what made me finally decide to try to go vegetarian or vegan again. Since, being forced to eat meat all those years ago. And the reason why is because I was like, can I say I love him if I don't even know what love is, if I don't even show love? And I was like, if I really knew what love is, I wouldn't, you know, discriminate in who I gave that love to, and I wouldn't discriminate in which creatures I gave that love to. And if I say I love him, I have to have love. I have to actually be love. I have to actually know what love is. And love is not just for humans, love should be for all things. And so if I'm only giving it to a human or humans, then I don't love, I only love humans. And that means I'm not love. That means my love is selective. That means my love is not real. That means my love is not unconditional. The condition is you have to be a human. And if you're anything else, then you don't get the same love. And that means that my love is not instinctual. My love is not something that just naturally pours out of me. It's more so manual. I can turn it on and I can turn it off. And that's not being a child of God. That's not being anywhere near God, if you can just turn it on and off, because once again, whatever religion you believe in, it talks about how your God or God loves you unconditionally and he doesn't turn it on and turn it off and things like that. And of course they say, well, God punishes you for this and he punishes you for that. And I think not believing in God can punish you. And the reason I say that is because, as someone who isn't religious, the reason I say that is because you are God. And so when you stop believing in yourself, you start to make mistakes and you start to do things that you probably wouldn't do if you could take all of your power and control back as God. And that's when life starts to get hard for you and you aren't in control of yourself anymore. Once again, kind of like humans, giving their power to other humans because they think that they're just humans instead of God. Um, like if I was a god and you're a god, I can't tell you what to do and you can't tell me what to do because we're both gods. But if I'm a human and you're a human and I'm, just a worker and you're the president, then maybe, yeah, you can't tell me what to do because you're the president. I'm just a regular human. But if we're both God, then it puts us on an equal playing field. And now I'm not going to give you my power. I'm not going to try to take your power because I respect your power. I respect mine. And I see eye to eye with you. And so when you stop doing that is when you lose your power and you can no longer alchemize in the world. Um, is that a bunny? Oh, it's a bunny! Hey, girl. But then you can no longer, um, you know, alchemize and create the way a god should be able to because you don't think that you're God anymore. You don't believe that you're God anymore. And so the only thing your power does create is the belief that you are powerless. And that's what you begin to see. Um, so all of that being said, um, I was gonna say, what is the bunny doing? All of that being said, so I really had to, in order to know that I loved him for sure, I had to make sure I actually loved and I didn't have a conditional love and I didn't have a love that was just I can manually turn it on or off because then that means I can turn off my love for him one day. And I loved him so much at that point. It was a fear of mine that to be able to just turn it off, because then that means you don't really love him. That means you have gone back on your word. That means you are untrustworthy. And that's not what one, I wanted to represent for myself, but two, like I said, even though I'm not religious anymore, I never really was. Like I said, yes, I think at one point I was, but it was just more so oh, I live in the South and everyone's religious here, and yeah, that's how it goes, more thing than I actually believed in Christianity. I think more so I believed in God, but not necessarily Christianity. And or Baptist. We were raised Baptist before we were Christians, and I didn't believe in that either. Um, and Sumerians. Our church was a Sumerian Baptist church, and it was just a hot fucking mess. Um, but I should have brought my blanket out here. It's fucking cold as shit. But I actually am waiting for my other blanket to finish in the dryer. So when I get back in my room, I can just fucking throw it all on me and go to fucking sleep. Um, but I do think that, like I said, it's not what I felt God was. Whenever I did feel that spirit around, it always was a very loving spirit. It was a very calming spirit. It was never an angry spirit. And no matter how many times I would mess up and go back to it, it always forgave me and showed me the right way. And so I said, I want this to be forever. I want this kind of love to be forever. And I knew I could only ever find it in God. But for I did ask, like, for people who don't believe in God, it would be good if they could find it at least in another human. And what I saw in all the humans I interacted with from a child until now is the love is very conditional. Once again, it starts with me eating. Like, hey, I love you unconditionally, unless you're a chicken, or unless you're a pig, or unless you're a cow. And then my love does become a bit conditional because I'm hungry, or because I love burgers, or because, like, I love hot dogs at the ballpark. Like, then the love becomes very conditional. And so that means your love isn't unconditional. That means your love is conditional. The condition is a human being. And once you start there, you can start placing other conditions on your love. Like, okay, well, now you have to be a rich human being. Now you have to be a tall human being. Now you have to be an athletic human being. Now you have to be a famous human being. And it becomes easier and easier for you to place conditions on them and then call them preferences. It makes it easier for you to place conditions and say, oh, well, that's just, what I've always believed, instead of realizing that that's not unconditional love then. And not only that, you cannot display unconditional love in one place and then over here you don't display it, because that means, once again, you don't even know what unconditional love is. You're just pretending to. If I can run to my neighbor on the left and say, oh my God, I love you guys unconditionally and show it, and then I can go to my neighbor on the right and say, oh my God, I love you. Not unconditionally, but I do love you. Here, the conditions are this. Then that means I really don't unconditionally love my neighbor on the left. That just means good thing you aren't my neighbor on the right, because then there would be conditions, and here are the conditions. But since you're my neighbor on the left, I can love you unconditionally. So that means if we read the fine print there, the condition is you just can't be the neighbor on the right. And so that means I don't actually love you unconditionally. I don't actually know what that is. It just means I think I do, and I'm saying I do, and I'm pretending I do, and I swear up and down I really, really do. But the condition is you just can't be the neighbor on the right, and I will love you unconditionally. That's the condition of the unconditions. And that doesn't make any sense. It's a paradox. It's not real. It doesn't make any sense. And so I wanted to make sure once I said I loved that person unconditionally, I actually meant it. And so I knew that that would mean I have to stop eating meat. I have to stop hurting animals and participating in the harm of animals, because my condition would then be I love him because he's a human. But once again, if he was a chicken, I would eat him. If he was a fucking any other animal that gets eaten in the world, I would fucking probably eat him. And that's not okay. That's not okay, because then that means I'm a liar. That means the condition is you have to be human. And so that means I don't love you unconditionally. And that's why you have to love unconditionally. And if you want to love another human being unconditionally, you have to stop eating meat. Because if not, the condition of loving that human being is that they at least have to be a human being. And that means you don't love them unconditionally if there's a condition. And so you have to get rid of that condition, number one. But number two, after you do get rid of that condition, you can't say, I love you now unconditionally, because, okay, cool, the condition's gone and stuff. And so you can say, well, now I love you and the animal's the same. Well, then that would kind of be fucked up, because that means you would eat me. You would fucking cut me up and you'd cook me and you'd hunt me in the woods and you'd eat me. That's what you're saying. Well, no, I would just do that to the animals. Well, then you don't love me as equally as the animals. In your case, from what you're saying, you love me more because you're willing to hurt the animals, but not me. And then that means our love goes back to one, being conditional, but two, you not loving these two creations equally. And so that makes everything you're saying a lie and a contradiction. And so that's why you cannot trust someone who eats meat, because they don't love unconditionally. The condition is you have to be a human. That's the first condition. Now, there may be a whole bunch of other conditions. Some may be very, very tailored to the individual, in fact. But for the most part, the first one is you just have to be human. And that's great because you're already a human. But you can also then say this. You can ask that person, hey, are you willing to place conditions on our love? And if they say no, they're a liar. Because the condition is that you have to be human. That's one. So that means they've already broken that word or that oath that they would never place conditions on their love for you. The condition is you have to be human. That's at least one. So they've already broken that. And if they'll break it once, who's to say they won't break it again? Who's to say they won't break it again? And they can say, oh, well, that's just one. I won't make any more. Well, how do I know you won't? Because you just said you love me. You've already broken the vow of loving me unconditionally. So who's to say you won't keep breaking more oaths or more vows that you say to me? and make more later. Oh, well, I won't. Well, it's kind of hard to believe you because you can't even keep the one oath of loving me unconditionally, of loving all things unconditionally. You can't even keep that one. So you've already broken one. Yeah, but I won't break another one. But how can I believe you when you've already broken one and you can't even hold to that one? And then usually with meat eaters comes other conditions. And the reason why is because there is a piece of empathy missing. So they won't be able to empathize with the differences of humans. They won't be able to empathize with the differences of life, of the differences of culture. And so their conditions will come. There will be more. If they eat meat, there will be more. Trust me. And so they may not ever love a homeless person. They may not ever love a person with fucked up teeth, or they may not ever love someone who doesn't have the latest phone or the latest car all the time. They may not love the person who doesn't make a whole bunch of money. And the reason why is because they are already okay with putting conditions on love. And so they will never, ever be able to unconditionally love you. And that is why I do not trust meat eaters. I don't befriend meat eaters. I don't get into relationships with meat eaters. I can be cordial with meat eaters. I will never invite a meat eater over my house. You cannot come in. And not even this house. When I move and I get another house, you cannot come in. I will barely offer you a ride if possible. I may give you money for the bus, but you can't get in my car. There's a carnal consent to violence that they have, and you have to be very careful with that. And some people may say that's a bit over the top. And that brings me to the next part of this, because I was not planning on staying on veganism and vegetarianism for that long. But I really wasn't. I thought this whole thing was going to be like 50 minutes and that was it. But I really do want to get this out, and I feel like there's this juice flowing, so I'm just gonna keep going with it, even though I do have to go to bed here soon, but I'm also hungry and I need to go to the store and get something to eat. And it's kind of cold. I don't feel like walking to the store. Um, I walked home from the bus stop. I had a lot on my mind, and so I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna walk. And so I waited. I was on the phone with my friend, and then I waited for the bus to come. And then I went to the store to get some cigars. I thought the store was 24 hours. At one point, it was 24 hours. There was a robbery not too long ago, and one of the men got killed. And so I guess it's not 24 hours. Girl, where are you going, bunny? Come here. Oh, hi. Hi, hi, hi. Oh, it's so cute. It's so cute. Please don't come over here. I don't want to steal you. Okay, sorry. But so it was closed, and I was just like, okay, fuck. And so I had to walk like the long route home, and then it started raining. But I love being in the rain, and I do suggest going in the rain clothed at least once in your life. I will tell you about that experience maybe at the end of this video. We'll see. If not, it'll be like another like video on why I suggest standing in the rain clothed at least once in your life. We'll get to that. But as I was saying, I wasn't. There's the bunny. Where did it go? It was just there. Now there's a rock. I don't know where the bunny went. It probably went over there and it's somewhere. But like I said, that's why I had to, when it came to loving this person, I had to stop eating. I had to. Because if I was okay with if I could excuse the violence of hurting an animal, I could one day excuse the violence between us if there ever were violence. I could excuse it. I could say, oh, it's just in his nature. Oh, it's just in my nature. Or, oh, I was just provoked. Or, oh, it was just, instinctual. Or, oh, it just all happened so fast. Like, I could find reasons to excuse violence when there is no excuse. Violence is very intentional. It is very intentional. And I do think if you have mental health issues and, from a young age, then it may not be so much as intentional because maybe you've never gotten help to figure out other ways. You never figure out healthier ways before. But at the same time, I am a firm believer if you don't want it done to you, don't do it to anyone else. And if you cannot, you know, distinct between the two, if your mind is that far gone, then I do think you do need some type of professional help. Um, so you can come back, so you can ground yourself, some type of therapy that can help you with that. And so I do think that there are cases where, once again, people have been in situations, maybe even worse than the ones I went through for years and years and years and years and years, and they never learn or they never have mentors or people that they bumped into that helped them along the way. Thankfully, I did. So I always knew right from wrong. I always knew, you know, violence wasn't an okay thing, even though sometimes I was violent. It was mainly always in self-defense, but when I was very young, no, I was just a fucking rude ass person. But after that, it was mainly just out of self-defense. I think fourth grade is when I got over that little streak. Um, excuse me. So, um, there are some cases where people do need help, but once again, I think the base rule is if you don't want it done to you, don't do it to others. And if you don't know anything else, just keep going with that. If you wouldn't want it done to you, don't do it to anyone else. And if you are okay with certain things happening to you, you have to ask yourself, is this thing hurting me? And why am I okay with it? Why am I so used to it? Why do I think this is fine or all right? And if it isn't happening to you, or if it is happening to you and you aren't okay with it and you don't like it, hey, that cat is gonna try to mess with that bunny. I already know it. Nope, nope, nope. Oh my god. Let me go get my healing kit. I'll be right back. I might have to make two parts to this, by the way. Or Jesus. It's fucking cold as shit. Peter. Okay, Bunny, I really just saved your life. Why would you run out of the gate? But at least the cat's not bothering her. But that's exactly what the cat was going. Because I knew the bunny was over there. And I just like and slowly walking over there. And so we all know what the fuck was going on. And girl, you're not gonna kill that cat in front of me. It's not happening. Any newsies. Arizona Cardinal. I mean, are they really Arizona Cardinals though? If they're not in Arizona. I mean, this is not Arizona, so is it? I mean, why would I call it Arizona Cardinal? Like, why would I call it that if it's not in Arizona? But I turned my heater on, so I'm really excited. I restarted my blanket in the dryer, so I'm gonna pull the old hurry up and run and get it out, and hurry up and run and get in bed. So like you can wrap up in all the warmth, especially after coming in from the cold. It should be perfect. And unfortunately, I'm probably not gonna eat anything if I do that because I'm gonna just go ahead and go to sleep. So it's either stay up and go get something to eat, or do that and go to sleep. I'm gonna take sleep for 500, Alex. Um, but this may be one of my longest videos, but I think that's okay. Like I said, I do want to talk about this. And so if you are one of those people, because like I said, I do want this to be for specific people going through specific things right now. If you're one of those people who've ever felt like, that, you're not alone. You're not alone if it comes to veganism and vegetarianism and the ideas of it. Like we all know that there's vegans out there. We all know that there's vegetarians out there. But if you're someone who's thinking of becoming one and you wonder if you're just being too sensitive or if you're being abnormal or if you're just being like a little wimp or a sissy or whatever the case may be, you're not the only one who's converted, you know? And if you're wondering what it's like to have family who still eat meat, I just I just choose not to eat meat, you know? Like my family, and I guess it's easier for me because I'm an adult, but I just say, hey, no, I'm not going to order that, or no, I don't want that. Or sometimes if people give me things, like my dad used to get me these sticks all the time from QT, and when I ate meat, I loved them. But now I don't. So when he gets them, I just give them to my brother, you know? And it's not a waste of money or meat or anything. But I think he's picked up on it, and now he just gets me the macaroni and cheese from there because I'm a vegetarian, I'm not vegan, which means I do partake in dairy, but I don't eat animals or kill animals. Um, and I do think one day I do want to try to go vegan, but I'm just not for sure. I don't know if it'll happen in this lifetime. I want it to try to happen in this lifetime. And I wanted to try to be raw vegan before I died. I don't think I'm gonna make it to raw vegan. I can barely make it to vegan. I love eggs too much. I love cheese too much. And I have had vegan cheese. It's not bad. I've had some really good vegan cheeses. Um, but eggs. I love sunny side up eggs. I love over easy eggs. I love over medium eggs. Like I'm an egg fucking whore. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I have to have eggs. I love them. So that's like the hardest thing to give up. Cheese, I found some good alternatives for, but eggs, no. I love eggs. And there is an alternative for scrambled eggs, like the just egg. I've had just egg before, and it's not bad. It's okay, but nothing beats a good yolk. Nothing really does. And I'm sorry, but until I find something that can beat that, I don't think I'm gonna. But I have chickens, and I have watched our chickens crack more eggs than I can count. So you really do actually sometimes save them. There's just not enough. They don't all sit on the eggs for some reason. I don't know why. They only have like two designated sitters, and one of them recently passed away after she got separated from her babies. Like they went into a different cage for a while, and she came out of the cage. So we just left them in the cage, and she came out, and we were trying to wing them off of each other, and I guess she just got depressed and died, and I felt really bad. And so now we have one designated sitter, and once again, they lay too many eggs to be able to sit on all of them. And so sometimes a lot of them crack, sometimes a lot of them never hatch. And so the best thing you can do to not waste those extra eggs is actually use them. That's literally the best thing you can do. And we don't go the incubator route. You could get an incubator route, but I'm glad we don't because it's just more electricity. And so I think the best thing you can do is just use them, you know? Um, Instead of using more electricity to keep getting all these chickens, what would we do with all these chickens? And all, what would we do? You just have extra electricity just so chickens can do what chickens do, when without the electricity, they would just break the eggs anyway. So you got to kind of think about it in a circle. Is it worth it? And could that electricity be used for something else elsewhere? And so there's more benefits to just eating the eggs than just incubating. Um, and so I'm glad. I'm glad for that. Because like I said, I love a good yolk. hmm hmm And that's, I think, the vegan vegetarian bit. Because I'm trying to make this an hour and a half at most. Um, it was only supposed to be about 50 minutes. It was supposed to be about this long, but I do think it's very important to speak on the changes of what that love made me feel and why I feel the way I feel now compared to what he's done. Um, and so it was very much, like I said, it was the closest I've ever felt to God because it was as close to unconditional love as I've ever seen. And I think it was even more amazing to me because I always wanted to see in other people, but I never, and I did say this. I said when I was 14 and I was crying in my room one night over a guy I thought I was in love with. The fact that I thought I was in love with that guy and now I actually love a guy. And I'm just like, it doesn't even the fucking handle. But of course, at 14, you think, oh my God, this is gonna be my baby daddy. Like he's gonna father all 16 of my children, and it doesn't go that way. Um, and of course, I did not love him because I was a fucking asshole to that person, and I was very jealous and envious, which are not signs of love at all. Um, and I was also very angry with him for his decisions, which isn't a sign of love. And I'll talk about that maybe in another video. Um, so I definitely didn't know what love was, but I thought I loved him. I think he was the first guy I ever had some love for, but maybe not the first guy I loved. I think the first guy I loved is the guy I love now. But I think over time I've had love for people. It just has not been unconditional the way it is now. And so and the thing that makes it different is when I did end up making the mistake, I realized I had what I did with the guy I love now is it was a form of manipulation. Even I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was a form of manipulation until I told my friend what happened, and I was kind of listening to myself as I was telling her what happened, and I was like, that does kind of sound like moving chess pieces on a board, you know? And I'm like, that does kind of sound manipulative, bitch. And I had to stop and think and say, everyone who's ever hurt me was doing the same thing. They saw something that they wanted. And instead of going about it the right way, or asking, or being honest, or being upfront, they decided to, have a ruse or play a game or lure someone in. And they ended up taking what they wanted from me after doing that. And I was like, that's basically what you would have done to that person. You would have, done something hoping that they would approve, and it would gain you points with them instead of just upfront saying what you wanted. And you probably never would have been honest with them if it would have all gone your way. And I mean, technically, I still could have never told him, but I did want him to have closure, and not so he could be with me, but I remember, being embarrassed by a lot of things that happened in my life. And I was like, I wish people would have told me instead of just, having me be embarrassed by it. And so I think more so it was me selfishly trying to like help him because I felt like it would be helping, the younger me. But had it gone the other way and he got what he wanted and it just didn't work out, he could have remembered. He could have been like, oh, but she's the one who tried to set it up. She's the one who tried to help. And it could have gained me points. It could have gotten me what I wanted. And that's not how you do that. Even if your intentions weren't to sabotage, it was still manipulate. And that's when I realized in that moment I was having predator ways. I was having ways of a predator. I was having ways of a chessboard, a chess piece mover or a manipulator. And I was like, you may have just done this, but how do you think all the people who hurt you, anybody who's ever molested you, anybody who's ever abused you, anybody who's ever sexually assaulted you, anybody who has ever, taken something from you, how do you think that they started? They started with one manipulative tactic after another, after another, after another, after another, after another, until they became addicted to the results of it, addicted to the power of it, the thrill of it, to the point that they stopped having morals. They stopped having empathy. They stopped having that switch that told them what's right and wrong. And it got worse and worse and worse. And look at what it did to you all these years, all these people. Look at what it did to you. And I was like, is that who you want to be? Even though you're not doing that to him, you are showing signs of being those people. And no, you're not doing what they did to you, to him, but you are still being manipulative to him. At least you guys all have that in common. And so that's when I realized, like, whoa, I was just a predator. He was just prey. And I was like, that's when I said, I don't like, why did I do that? I never thought I'd be, those kind of people. Why did I do that? What caused me to do that? I didn't know I was doing that. And it scared me that I did something that I really didn't know I was doing. And it's because I thought it was something else, and or at least that's what I told myself, and it really bothered me. And so I had to sit and I had to realize, like, he has a right to actually be very upset about what I did. Um, Now, maybe his reasons weren't what he said they were, but that's not up for you to decide. He still has the right to be upset. And you may feel like your reasoning was not what he thought it was. And it wasn't, but it still was manipulative. And he has a reason to be upset about the other half of it. Even if you're used to that type of life, even if you're used to people randomly texting you and things like he may not be. And so you're placing your perspective on someone else and expecting them to be okay with it. And how is that you showing that you could actually love him or care for him? How did you feel when people didn't care about your perspective growing up? How did you feel when people didn't hear, your feelings and what you had to say? And that's kind of what you're doing to him right now. And that's when I realized, like, I was being to him what I felt like my mother had been to me. And like I said, all those other horrible people had been to me. And I really had to like take a step back and be like, who am I becoming? Why am I doing this? And once I realized why I was doing it, I had to sit back and say, okay, well, what did my mom say when this, or what did this person do and this person? And I realized what they all had in common is we all wanted power in that moment. We all wanted control over a situation. And we were willing to force or exert our energy onto something else to get the outcome we wanted. Whether it be sexual assault, whether it be abusing your child, or whether it be, you know, chess piece moving or manipulating someone into loving you or being with you or sleeping with you, whatever the case may be, you are in that moment taking your energy, throwing it and covering it on someone else and demanding that they conform and that they submit or risk punishment or more abuse. And that isn't love, and that isn't care, and that isn't being thoughtful. And it did send me into my ego death. And so when he did what he did to me afterwards, it really did make things more traumatic for me because it's like, whoa, didn't you just kind of like get upset with me about something similar? And it was either because he really was not upset about what I did, he was just using it as a means of manipulation, or he was upset by what I did and thought, hey, I'm inspired actually, so let me go and try to do it to her, which is horrible because he should know the effect of it, or he should know the downside to it and not do it to someone else, which he didn't. Or what I think is even a bit worse. Sorry, I'm gonna turn my brightness a little bit. He felt like, well, she did this to me already, so let me do it to her as a punishment. And either way, once I learned from my mistake and I changed my ways and I did begin to love him unconditionally after that, because I had to realize like I can't be mad at him. I can't, say what in what time frame he has to get over something or what time frame, you know, he should conform to my way of thinking. And even when he decided to like leave where we both were together and go explore, I had to be okay with it because what are you gonna do? Are you gonna hold someone hostage? Or are you gonna fucking, you know, just kidnap somebody? Like, what are you gonna do? You have to, if you really love them, sometimes you do have to let people go. And especially if that's what will make them happy at that time. And so that's what I had to do. And it really was unconditional after that. It just was as long as this person's breathing and happy and they're not hurting anybody, then go for it, Um, And it does put you in a space when you do unconditional love, it does put you in a space to be hurt a lot, because you will often find that everyone doesn't love as hard as you love and as freely as you love, and that there will be conditions with other people sometimes, and they will be a little less empathetic. But once again, the best thing you can do is only surround yourself with people who love how you love. Anybody else, just be cordial. Hey, how you doing? Oh, that's cool. Good to hear. Oh, wow, nice. Okay. And then just keep it moving. Don't give them too much of yourself, because you already know that you can't trust them to unconditionally love you. You already trust that you can't show up, in any kind of way, shape, or form, even on your bad days, because they won't understand. And you can expect that from them, because that's how they've shown. That's what they've shown the world. Because I've already explained to you how their love is conditional. Um, and so I do think I'm gonna make this a part two, simply because I don't know how much I can upload to YouTube all at once. But I know I can upload an hour, I think, in maybe 20 minutes. So I'm gonna go to an hour 20 minutes, and then after that I'll just make it a part two. Same sitting, but it'll be two different parts. Um, so it did become very unconditional, but once again, what I was seeing back was very manipulative tactics from even him himself. And it kind of confused me. I think that was the first moment of confusion. Because it's like, whoa, you just made a big deal out of what you thought was me manipulating you. But instead, now you're manipulating me, or, and you're manipulating everybody. And it became very much confusing to me. And it was not a form of self love that he showed to chase after someone who had disrespected him. And I did wonder why he would do something like that to want someone who was so disrespectful and horrible to him. And I thought, oh, possibly love, the way I think I'm starting to love him. But then he wasn't showing unconditional love to me or to any other body, other person. And so I knew it wasn't unconditional love. I knew it was infatuation. And so I did start to see him as someone who really was a threat to himself, because it shows that you will chase pretty faces that don't love or care for you. And I think anybody who's ever gotten robbed, anybody who's ever gotten drugged, anybody who's ever gotten fucking shot in the fucking face or killed by a pretty face will tell you why that's not a good thing, to follow a pretty face out of a bar just because it's a pretty face. Um, and so, of course, as someone who loved him, I started to be like, ooh, he can't really protect himself. And of course, after, everything with me and what I did with him, I was like, he didn't even know that I had done what I did. I had to tell him. And I was like, he doesn't know what's going on. He thinks he does. And I love him and I don't want that to happen to him. He reminds me of me. And at that time, he did remind me of me, because like I said, when I was young and I thought I knew everything that was going on, people were hurting me, people were manipulating me and taking advantage of me. And so to see it happen to him, and he think he knows all of what's fucking going on, it did become, wow, he really reminds me of me. And I really had this urge to protect him and cover him and like show him, And like I said, it became a very much an unconditional love, a very passionate, protective, instinctual kind of love. And I didn't just have it with him, I started to have it with everyone, because I realized whether someone's good or bad, there's reasons why people are the way they are. Um, and if it's good, it's because they've just, always had it good, but it doesn't mean that they can protect themselves from the bad. And if they're bad people, it's probably because they've seen a lot of bad, but it doesn't mean that there's no good for them to indulge in. And so I began to have empathy for literally everything and everyone and everybody. And like I said, it was driving me towards vegetarianism and veganism again. And I became a very empathetic and passionate person way more than I even was before. And it's been that way ever since. And that was, I met him at 23. So that was 5 years ago. And what he ended up doing was just so traumatizing because it, and this is what I want to speak about. And I guess this is where I'll leave it. I'll leave it here because I talked about some good stuff in here that I think can be standalones, but we can bridge them together somehow, some way. I'll do it title wise. So give me a minute.